Doubt isn't a sign that you've lost faith. It's often the very soil where faith begins to grow. People like to pretend they've got it all together, that they never question God. But the truth is, everyone wrestles with uncertainty. Every great believer in history had moments where they looked up and said, "Lord, what are you doing?" That's not weakness. That's humanity. And that's where God meets you. Faith isn't pretending everything is fine. It's choosing to trust when everything looks wrong. It's standing in the storm and saying, "I still believe there's purpose in this pain." That's what God honors, not perfection, but persistence. Doubt may knock, but faith decides who stays. When Thomas doubted Jesus, he didn't get condemned, he got invited. Jesus said, "Touch my hands, see for yourself." That's the grace of God. He doesn't shame you for asking questions. He reveals himself in the middle of them. That's what makes faith real, not blind belief, but a heart that keeps seeking. Every time you bring your doubt to God, you build a bridge between confusion and clarity. The people who grow strongest in faith aren't the ones who never question. They're the ones who question and still keep walking. God would rather have your honesty than your fake confidence. So when life throws you off course, when you don't understand what He's doing, that's not the time to pull back. That's the time to press in. Bring those questions to Him. Bring those tears to Him. Bring that frustration to Him. Because the moment you bring your doubts to God, you give Him permission to turn them into wisdom. Faith doesn't silence your questions. It gives your questions a place to land, right at His feet. Stop trying to pray pretty prayers. God's not impressed by fancy words. He listens to real hearts. Too many people think they've got to filter what they say to God, like they're in an interview instead of a relationship. But God already knows the real you. He knows the thoughts you hide, the fears you mask, and the pain you don't post about. He's not asking for performance. He's asking for truth. When David cried out in the Psalms, he didn't sugarcoat his emotions. He said things like, "My soul is in despair," or "Why have you forsaken me?" That's raw. That's the kind of honesty that moves heaven. Because God can work with truth. He can't work with pretending. You don't need to come to God strong. You just need to come real. If you're angry, tell Him. If you're confused, tell Him. If you feel abandoned, tell Him. Honesty isn't disrespect. It's connection. It's saying, "Lord, I don't understand, but I'm still here." And that kind of prayer opens doors no perfect speech ever could. We wear masks to protect ourselves from people, but those same masks block the presence of God. He's not looking for the version of you that impresses others. He's looking for the one that's crying in the dark, holding on by a thread. That's where He shows up the strongest. When you pour out your heart honestly, you make room for His healing to pour in. God can't heal what you hide. But the moment you speak truth, the chains start to crack. That's where peace begins, in the space where you stop pretending and start praying from the gut. So be raw, be unfiltered, be real. Because when you bring your honesty to God, He brings His comfort to you. And in that exchange, doubt loses its grip. When doubt shows up, don't panic, pause. Because doubt isn't a wall meant to stop you. It's a door meant to push you deeper into faith. The problem is, too many people stop at the question instead of walking through it with God. They assume uncertainty means absence. But sometimes uncertainty is where you actually discover His presence. Abraham doubted when God told him he'd have a son in old age. Moses doubted when he stood before Pharaoh. Even Elijah doubted after calling fire from heaven. But every one of them found out that doubt doesn't end your story. It deepens it. When you bring your doubt to God, you shift from, "Why is this happening?" to, "What are you teaching me through this?" That's where maturity grows. Doubt handled right doesn't destroy faith. It strengthens it. It teaches you to lean, to listen, to look again. Some people think faith means never questioning, but faith means trusting even while questioning. It's being honest enough to say, "I don't understand, but I still believe you're good." That's grown-up faith, not built on feelings, but on truth. If you never doubted, you'd never discover. The questions you wrestle with today might become the testimony you share tomorrow. God doesn't waste questions. He turns them into clarity at the right time. So don't run from your doubt. Bring it. Put it on the table before God and let Him speak into it. Because the very thing you're unsure about may be the thing He uses to build your next level of faith. Fear loves to whisper. Keep quiet. Don't pray. Don't ask. Don't hope again. It tries to convince you that your situation is too far gone, that your prayer doesn't matter, that your faith won't change anything. But fear is a liar. And the moment you open your mouth and start talking to God, fear starts losing power. Faith and fear both want your attention, but only one deserves it. You can't fight fear by ignoring it. You conquer it by bringing it to God. You face it head on, trembling if you must, but standing anyway. That's what faith looks like, not the absence of fear, but the courage to trust in the presence of it. When Gideon was called by God, he was hiding in fear. But God didn't see a coward, He saw a warrior. And when Gideon brought his fear to God, instead of running from it, God turned that fear into fuel. That's what He does. He takes your "I can't" and turns it into "I did" through Him. Fear grows in silence. But the moment you bring it into prayer, light exposes it. Prayer breaks the cycle. It shifts the focus from what you can't control to the one who controls it all. You don't have to feel brave to act in faith. Courage isn't loud. Sometimes it's a whisper that says, "Lord, I'm scared, but I'm still moving." That's all it takes for heaven to respond. Fear tells you to step back. Faith says, "Step up." And every time you choose faith over fear, you get stronger. Because fear might visit your life, but it doesn't have the right to stay. Everybody wants strong faith, but nobody wants the process that builds it. Strength doesn't come from blessings, it comes from battles. Every challenge you face, every disappointment you survive is God's gym for your spirit. It's not punishment, it's preparation. When life hits hard, it's easy to say, "God, why are you doing this?" But often God isn't breaking you down, He's building you up. The very thing that feels like pressure is the thing forming your foundation. You can't grow muscles without resistance. And you can't grow faith without friction. Joseph didn't grow his faith in comfort, he grew it in captivity. David didn't learn courage on a throne, he learned it while running from Saul. Paul didn't find joy in freedom, he found it in a prison cell. God uses hard places to train strong hearts. The struggle doesn't mean God left you. It means He's trusting you. He's letting you face what others couldn't handle because He knows what He put inside you. That's not punishment. That's promotion. So when the weight feels unbearable, remember, you're not lifting alone. God is spotting you. Every tear, every trial, every test is producing something in you that success never could. One day you'll look back and thank Him for the fight, because that's where you learn to stand. Strength isn't built when life's easy. It's built when you refuse to give up. If faith depended on feelings, nobody would ever make it. Because some days you won't feel strong. Some days you won't feel hopeful. But faith isn't about what you feel, it's about what you choose. You decide, "God, even when my emotions are all over the place, I'll still trust you." Feelings are unpredictable, but faith is unwavering. You can't build your life on emotion. It changes with the wind. But you can build it on God's word. That's a rock that never moves. When Jesus said, "Not my will, but yours be done," He didn't feel like it. But obedience overruled emotion. That's real faith. God doesn't require you to feel brave. He requires you to be obedient. Every time you stand firm when your emotions tell you to run, heaven takes note. You're proving that your trust is deeper than your mood. Faith is not something you wait to feel, it's something you decide to do. It's waking up and saying, "I'll walk by faith today, even if I have to limp." Because trust isn't proven when things make sense, it's proven when they don't. When you keep showing up through the storm, God keeps showing off His strength through you. That's how endurance is built, one choice of trust at a time. So when your feelings start shouting fear, let your faith whisper truth. You can't control emotions, but you can choose your response. And choosing faith is the decision that changes everything. When life gets painful, most people pull back. They stop praying, stop believing, stop hoping. But that's exactly when you need God most. Running away doesn't heal you, it just hides you. And what you hide never gets healed. The prodigal son thought he was too far gone. He doubted his worth, doubted his father's love, and ran away. But when he finally turned back home, his father ran to meet him. That's God's heart, not condemnation, but compassion. You might feel like you failed too much to come back, but that's a lie. God doesn't keep score to shame you. He keeps doors open to restore you. He's not angry at you. He's waiting on you. No matter how far you've drifted, one prayer can bring you home. You don't need to have it all together. You just need to come as you are. God doesn't fix you before He loves you. He loves you while He's fixing you. When you run to God, you don't find rejection, you find redemption. He's not interested in your perfect record. He's after your surrendered heart. So stop running in circles, trying to numb the pain. Run toward the one who can actually heal it. Because every step toward God is a step away from doubt. Sometimes you think you're the only one wrestling with questions, but you're not. Even the strongest believers have moments of uncertainty. The disciples walked with Jesus, saw miracles with their own eyes, and still doubted. That means doubt doesn't disqualify you. It connects you to every believer who's ever walked this path. When you're isolated, doubt grows louder. That's why the enemy wants to keep you alone, because community silences confusion. When you talk to others who've been through what you're facing, you realize you're not weak, you're human. God never meant for you to carry your questions alone. He designed faith to grow in community. Iron sharpens iron. Testimonies strengthen hearts. When you share your struggle, you give someone else permission to breathe again. The enemy whispers, "You're the only one." But God says, "You're surrounded." You're surrounded by His presence, His promises, and people who've survived what you're surviving. You're not abandoned. You're accompanied. Your doubt might feel unique, but it's not unfamiliar to heaven. God's seen it before, and He's delivered through it before. Every time you reach out for help, you make space for His grace to move. You're not fighting this alone. You're part of a kingdom where everyone's still learning, still growing, still trusting. And every question you bring to God draws you closer to His truth. One of the hardest things to face in life is God's timing. You pray, you believe, and you wait. But nothing seems to happen. That waiting room can make you start doubting. You start wondering if maybe God forgot, or worse, if He changed His mind. But let me tell you something, delay is not denial. A delay doesn't mean God said no. It often means He's still preparing you for what's next. Every promise has a process. Before David wore the crown, he had to survive the cave. Before Joseph ruled in Egypt, he had to endure betrayal and prison. Before Jesus walked out of the tomb, he had to walk through the cross. God's timing may not make sense, but it's never off schedule. Sometimes God holds back what you prayed for because if He gave it too soon, it would crush you. Blessings without preparation can become burdens. So while you're waiting, God is shaping you, strengthening your faith, building your character, and aligning every piece of the plan. You see, when God delays, He's not punishing you, He's protecting you. He's holding things back until your foundation is ready to carry the weight of what's coming. Waiting seasons are working seasons. Heaven is moving even when earth feels still. So when doubt starts whispering, "It's not going to happen," remind yourself, God's delays are divine setups. He's not done. He's developing something you can't see yet. The silence is not rejection, it's construction. When the door doesn't open right away, don't quit knocking. Keep praying, keep trusting. Because when the appointed time comes, what took years to pray for can happen in moments. And when it finally happens, you'll look back and realize every second of waiting was part of His perfect plan. We live in a world that celebrates strength and hides weakness. Everyone wants to look unshakable, untouchable, and always in control. But God doesn't need your image of strength. He needs your admission of weakness, because your weakness is where his power shines the brightest. Paul said, "When I am weak, then I am strong." He didn't say that because he enjoyed pain, but because he discovered something deeper. When he ran out of his own power, he tapped into God's. The moment you stop pretending to be self-sufficient is the moment you experience divine sufficiency. So don't be ashamed of your weakness. Don't let pride keep you from God's help. Weakness isn't failure, it's an invitation. Every time you say, "Lord, I can't do this," heaven responds, "Good, because I can." That's the exchange of grace, your surrender for his strength. We've been taught to hide our flaws, but the truth is, God can't bless who you pretend to be. He can only bless the real you, the one that's tired, broken, and desperate for him. Bring your weakness to God and watch how he transforms it into a testimony. When you depend on your own power, you limit what's possible. But when you depend on his, you step into the supernatural. That's when doors open you couldn't push. That's when peace comes you couldn't find. That's when victory arrives you couldn't earn. Don't curse your weakness. Thank God for it. Because every time you hit your limit, you discover that his grace is none. The same place you feel weakest might be the very place God's about to move strongest. And when he does, everyone will know it wasn't your power, it was his. Comparison is one of doubt's greatest weapons. You start looking at what everyone else has, their blessings, their pace, their progress, and suddenly you feel like God forgot about you. But comparison blinds you to your own calling. What God's doing in someone else's life is not meant to discourage you. It's meant to remind you he's still moving. Every person's timeline is different. God isn't using the same clock for everyone. So stop asking, "Why not me?" and start saying, "God, I trust your timing for me, because what's meant for you will never pass you by." When Peter took his eyes off Jesus and started looking at John, he began to sink. That's what happens when you look sideways instead of upward. You lose focus. You lose faith. You start sinking in things you were meant to walk on. Comparison creates insecurity, and insecurity feeds doubt. You begin questioning your purpose, your gifts, your progress. But God didn't create you to compete. He created you to complete the assignment only you can fulfill. Your lane is yours for a reason. When you bring your comparison to God, he reminds you, you're not behind, you're being refined. You're not delayed, you're being developed. You're not forgotten, you're being positioned. He's not preparing something small for you, he's preparing something specific. Celebrate others' success without doubting your own. When you can cheer for someone else, it shows you trust the God who writes both stories. There's no scarcity in his kingdom. If he blessed them, he can bless you too. So keep your eyes on your mission. Stay in your lane. Trust your pace, because what God has for you won't miss you. The biggest battlefield of faith isn't around you. It's inside you. The enemy doesn't have to destroy your life. He just has to distract your mind. Because if he can fill your head with lies, fear, and confusion, he can paralyze your spirit. But you've got power over that battlefield. You don't have to accept every thought that enters your mind. When doubt says, "You're not enough," God says, "You're chosen." When fear says, "You can't," God says, "You can do all things through me." When anxiety says, "It's over," God says, "I'm just getting started." The key is to replace lies with truth. Every thought you entertain either feeds your faith or fuels your fear. That's why prayer and the Word of God are essential. They're not religious habits, they're spiritual weapons. You don't just read the Word to know it. You read it to use it. You fight back with it. You speak it over your life when your mind starts spinning. God never promised the absence of thoughts, but he promised the authority to control them. You can take every thought captive and make it obey the truth of Christ. You're not powerless. You're not stuck. You've got the authority to reclaim your peace. When your mind starts racing, pause and pray, "God, align my thoughts with your truth." That single prayer can shift everything, because where his peace enters, confusion exits. The enemy's goal is to make you forget who you are, but God's word reminds you of what you carry. You are equipped, anointed, and covered. No thought from hell can undo what heaven has declared over your life. So stand firm. Guard your mind. Fill it with faith until doubt has no room to live. Sometimes your doubt doesn't come from delay. It comes from disappointment. You prayed for something, believed for it, built your hopes around it, and it still fell apart. The dream crumbled. The door closed. And you're left staring at the ruins, wondering, God, where were you? But broken dreams aren't the end. They're the beginning of something new. God is a restorer. He doesn't just repair what's lost, he rebuilds it better. When Job lost everything, God didn't just replace it, he doubled it. When the Israelites thought they'd never recover from exile, God said, I will restore the years the locusts have eaten. That's his character. Restoration, not regret. You don't have to hide your disappointment from him. Bring it, lay it down. God doesn't turn away from broken hearts. He moves toward them. He collects your tears. He keeps record of your pain. And when you least expect it, he starts bringing life to places that felt dead. The pieces you thought were useless are the exact materials he uses to build purpose. That breakup, that failure, that closed door, none of it was wasted. Every loss is a lesson, every wound is a seed, and every setback is a setup for something greater. When you surrender what broke you, you make room for what's being born in you. God can't fill hands that are still gripping the past, so release it even through the tears. One day, you'll see why it had to fall apart, because something stronger, deeper, and more divine was being built in its place. And when it's all said and done, you won't just have your dream back, you'll have your faith back stronger than ever. Nobody likes the dark seasons, the confusion, the waiting, the silence. But that's where faith is forged. Seeds don't grow in sunlight, they grow underground in hidden places. You may feel buried, but you're actually being planted. What feels like darkness is often divine development. When life goes dark, our first instinct is to panic. But sometimes the absence of light doesn't mean God left, it means he's working unseen. You don't see roots growing, but they are. You don't hear progress, but it's happening. God is strengthening what's beneath before he reveals what's above. Job lost everything, yet still said, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. That's not blind faith, that's bold faith. That's the kind that only comes from walking through nights that don't make sense. Because in darkness, your dependency shifts from sight to spirit. You may not see what's happening, but faith doesn't need to see. It needs to believe. Darkness doesn't destroy faith, it deepens it. The silence teaches you to listen. The stillness teaches you to trust. When it's dark, don't give up. Keep praying. Keep walking. Keep believing. The sunrise always comes after the longest night. Faith that's never been tested is faith that can't be trusted. So if you're being tested right now, it means God is about to reveal something greater. Remember, the tomb looked dark too, but 3 days later, light broke through. Feelings are powerful, but they're not permanent. One day you feel strong, the next you feel lost. One day you feel close to God, the next you wonder if he's even listening. But faith doesn't live by feelings, it lives by facts. You don't need to feel God to know he's there. When the storm hits, your emotions will tell you everything is falling apart. But the truth says, God is still in control. Your heart may scream, it's over, but heaven whispers, I'm not finished. That's why you have to anchor in what you know, not what you feel. You know he's been faithful before. You know he's carried you through worse. You know he hasn't failed you yet. So hold on to what's proven when what's present feels shaky. When Peter stepped out of the boat, his feelings screamed fear, but faith told his feet to move. He didn't wait for confidence, he walked with conviction. Sometimes you have to move before you feel ready, because obedience always precedes peace. Your emotions may fluctuate, but God's promises don't. You can stand on his word even when everything else is sinking. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Feelings can't change that. So bring your emotions to God, all of them. Let Him filter them through truth. Let Him replace panic with peace. Because when you stand on what you know, your faith stays steady no matter what you feel. Doubt will always try to knock on the door of your heart. It's part of being human. It shows up in quiet moments, in unexpected delays, in the storms that seem endless. But faith decides who gets to stay. Doubt may visit, but it doesn't get to move in. Faith doesn't mean you never question. It means you keep believing while you question. It's saying, God, I don't see it yet, but I still trust you. That's what keeps you anchored when everything around you shakes. Every time you bring your doubts to God, He strengthens what's weak inside you. Because faith isn't about your strength, it's about His. It's not about having all the answers, it's about trusting the one who does. You might feel like your faith is small, but small faith in a big God can move mountains. You don't need to have it all figured out, you just need to keep showing up in faith. Keep praying. Keep believing. Keep bringing it to Him. Faith isn't a one-time act, it's a daily decision. It's choosing to stand even when you're shaking. It's choosing to trust even when you're tired. It's choosing to stay close even when you don't understand. And every time you choose faith over doubt, you grow. Every time you bring your uncertainty to God, He trades it for peace. Every time you stand when you could have quit, heaven celebrates. Because faith isn't proven by how loud you praise, it's proven by how long you persevere. And when you bring your doubts to God, you never walk alone.